All right, everyone, talk about surprise. I was looking yesterday and there was a Chicago Tribune article, actually, that was in regards to this sort of censorship and crap that's happening on big tech, about how there's a really simple solution. It was a very, very small, simple write-up about this, and I happen to agree with the principle. Instead of spending, hundreds of millions of dollars trying to fight fake news, which, whatever that means, it basically means, news that Zuckerberg doesn't like, on that platform, or news that some other site admin doesn't like anywhere else. Instead of wasting money and people's time and making your site less functional by tinkering and experimenting with making filters and algorithms and using AI, wouldn't it be much more simple to just have something on your site that says, oh, not everything on this site is to be taken seriously? Now, there's actually a precedent for doing that, and that's 4chan. Think about what 4chan is. It's far edgier than the average Facebook page, depending on which board, of course, you go to. It's constantly inflamed by trolls, and the pages raid one another and raid other sites, and there's porn and everything else on 4chan. It's literally, it's insane, and it used to be, by the way, even edgier. Back, you're talking maybe 2010, 2011 era, on the random page on B, it was like a total shitfest. Now, politically incorrect is usually the edgiest, but it's filled with raids. It's filled with all sorts of weird stuff. But they get by because they say, hey, everything on this site is satire. You'd have to be an idiot to take it seriously, basically. A little bit tongue-in-cheek, but the basic principle could be extended very easily, I think, to these other sites. Why exactly? When did we determine as a society that people were so fucking dumb that they had to be warned that something was fake or satirical? That's sort of the point of good satire, is to craft it in such a way that it goes viral. People, if they're dumb, take it seriously anyway. And yet then there was an incident not long ago where Snopes apparently marked a deliberately satirical post. It was about how, I think, CNN put its stories in a washing machine beforehand. I don't exactly get the punchline. It was blatantly false, though. It was the Babylon Bee. Now, the Babylon Bee, while it's a religious news outlet per se, is satire. It's like The Onion, only maybe with a religious bent. This was marked as fake news by Snopes. Now, in the bottom of the Snopes article, they say, the basic problem is that people don't realize that it's a satire site. It's like, you spread something from the Daily Current. But then Facebook actually sent a notification, it seems, to the Babylon Bee on Facebook saying, well, if you post fake news again, we might have to demote your content. Now, number one, it's counterproductive, because guess what? That I've never heard of the Babylon Bee. I'm sure that the average satire fan hasn't heard of it. But now a lot of people have, especially people who like free speech. There's a big overlap, I think, between satire and comedy at this point and the movement towards free speech. I see with this YouTubers Union thing, by the way, you should look that up. I support the notion. I think Baked sent me an email earlier saying that JF's recent stream got sandboxed. It got put in limited state. We've got problems on this platform too. Now, Facebook, imagine as YouTubers, we look at YouTube, we're like, we've got a major problem going on. On Facebook, it happened so often that it's become passé to the point where nobody even bats an eye when weird shit like that happens. At least on YouTube, we're kind of surprised. We're kind of surprised at how draconian it seems, and they're like, we're making mistakes, and, our new moderators, they don't always get it right. Basically, you're saying that the new moderators, aka NGO staffers, are just mass flagging everything across YouTube, and you're trying to stop that from happening without actually being able to stop it. It's basically what you're telling me, but at least it takes people aback on the platform. On Facebook, nobody's surprised when Zuckerberg does something crazy. It's like I'm telling you, he's a synth from the Institute. He's an experimental pre-Gen 3 model. He's like Nick Valentine, only not benevolent. That's basically what Zuckerberg is. You can look at him and tell that's the fact. You don't even need a filter for the picture to see that. It's like his legs bend backwards when he walks, or some crazy shit too. I think they didn't calibrate him quite properly at times, and there's some problems. No, but the Chicago Tribune is correct on this one. You go further. You do this on YouTube. You do this on Twitter. Basically, on sites where information is disseminated in a decentralized manner, instead of trying to fight the fake news, fight the propaganda, Just gently remind people, hey, if you see a news story on here, you might want to check whether it's actually true. Why do you think that a corporation or a government should be tasked with that anyway? Like, let alone having a moral implication involved, let alone whether it's a good idea to give them that power. Is it really necessary? Are there so many, a dumb person's probably going to spread around stupid shit even if you warn them. Even if you remind them, hey, this story is satire. I've seen people literally spread satire around on Facebook, YouTube, wherever, and I've told them, hey, this isn't actually true. Oh, well, you're a naysayer, or you're a shill, or something. You're being paid to tell me that. So I don't know, maybe the person is a propagandist from Russia, but it's much more likely, in all likelihood, 99.9% chance, they're just freaking dumb. Trust me, if you deprive them of their fake news, they're going to still post dumb things because they're dumb. They're dumb individuals. There's no way to increase their mental processing capabilities and give them common sense. You can't force people not to be dumb. If only we lived in a world where it was easy enough, so that simply attempting to educate someone eventually always paid off. We'd make leaps and bounds as a world community if that were the case. I don't think we'd have a problem with the Cold War. We wouldn't have a problem with anything because we could go in and visit the stars. We'd be like Star Trek or something. But that's not happening. There are limitations to your ability to make sure to improve other people's lives, just like with every other debate that boils down to the concept of the government saving people from themselves. Don't bother. Because people who are intelligent, who are hardworking, they're smart, they're noble, they've got common sense, they don't need your help. They're the ones you should be favoring, and the huddled masses, so to speak, that are dumb enough to think, oh, this article from the Onion is obviously real. This thing that I saw on the fringe of the weird side of YouTube, that's total tinfoil mode, I'm sure it's true. Nibiru is coming in 2012. It's going to smash into the world and destroy it entirely. I've got to go sit on my roof on that night so I can be with Jesus. There are people who believe this sort of thing. Over and over, even after it's been wrong over and over. It's like with the Doomsday Cult. Doomsday Cult comes along. They said, well, the world's going to end on such and such a date. Everyone goes out, they put their sackcloth on, and they sit on top of the barn drinking, and then they pass out, and they wake up the next day. Oh, shit, the world didn't end. Oh, whoops, says the pastor who's, taking their money, or wives usually. I miscalculated. I got something wrong with one of these constellations. It's actually next year. And they can do this over and over and over again. You'd be surprised how many people consistently will continue to believe the same thing despite constant problems in prediction. It's the same way with like fake news. There are people, they see a site has posted satire, and then they'll do the same thing again. They'll still believe it. And it's weird almost. Or this uploader got it wrong on YouTube. This government conspiracy theory about martial law on such and such a day didn't pan out. Well, I'm sure that their next prediction of martial law will come true. And they've done this before. I even subscribe to a few channels that are fundamentally like that because I like their coverage of political talk. But that doesn't mean I trust them when it comes to their predictions, their prophetic stuff. It's like, I can't remember that one dude's name who claims like remote viewing capabilities, and he was like Jeb Bush would be the Republican nominee, and they've already had the board meeting. He's gonna be the next president. I am absolutely certain, he said. I have seen it myself because I used remote viewing to see the meeting. Well, he was totally wrong. And I told him that at the time. A couple of his fans got angry. They're like, well, you don't know what you're talking about. You just wish you could remote view. Because he can't remote view. There's no fucking such thing. It doesn't exist. But there are people who take it seriously. Yeah, sorry, that's not a particular component of the occult that I happen to believe in. And it is basically psychic arts overlap with it. ESP to some extent in an unexplained sense, absolutely I believe in. And I've seen some evidence that maybe there's some weird electromagnetic shit that allows mild telekinesis once in a while, but I've never seen anything that suggests that remote viewing is true. And I think it's a bunch of hokum. I think it's a parlor trick that happens to be real complicated and that governments spent a lot of their time and money investigating only to find, whoops, it doesn't actually work, common sense prevails. That's okay. We'll write off that $5 million we spent on these studies at the Pentagon. No, we'll just lose it accidentally. Whoops, we lost $5 million. Can't tell you what we spent it on. It's classified. It's double compartmentalized and triple top secret, so you can't know. You have to talk to the one blind, deaf Nigerian that we told about it. He's living out in the desert somewhere, so good luck finding him. That's basically how it works. As far as disclaimers on the site, yeah, it's perfectly fine. Why not? It could work. Other sites already do this. They don't try to police the fake news. They don't care if you post satire on 4chan. Well, that's a good thing. That's people go there for their information at some point. Now, and I'm sure that the lame stream, what they're actually going to do is drive a lot of people into alternative sites and even older. 4chan's not exactly a new site. They're going to drive people onto sites that are far less loving towards censorship. People will go there and get even edgier content than they're getting on the much watered down platforms like Facebook or YouTube. Ultimately, very tame, very mild platforms. A lot of interesting stuff maybe on YouTube, but ultimately most of the content is pretty mundane. It's like makeup videos, very dry news analysis stuff. It's within the Overton window on all fronts. Lame stream religious opinion, stuff like that. It's not like, oh, here's a bowl girl, posted for the 10th time today. It's not the same thing. You're going to drive people onto those sites, and those are well beyond the reach of censorship. I'm sorry, but there's really not much that the lame stream at this point can do to shut down or stymie these sites. There are too many of them, and they've got too much collective power. And these big tech firms, at some point, because of money, are going to tell the NGOs enough is enough. They will. They're going to have to. For their own survival, there will come a point at which I expect that Google's CEO is going to go and say, well, we're no longer working with the NGOs. They wanted too much. It's impossible to do so. They'll appeal to Congress to label them public utilities to get censorship off the table before they will destroy themselves, I think, if they're smart. Just the way that it works, they're going to think about their wallet. And that'll be a good thing when that comes, and the only alternative is that alt tech rises up and replaces them entirely. And they know this. They've seen, it's happened on the internet before. Social media comes along, totally lays waste to a lot of the old style standalone sites. They become little more than an app or a page subjugated to a parent company that's one of the newer big tech firms. They buy up these smaller companies over and over again, or they take and replicate the basic function. It's like the concept of live chat on YouTube, or even some of the chatting capabilities of other bigger sites. Now, roughly, it's basically based on IRC when you think about it. It's really not that different. It's live. That's an interesting place to chat. YouTube has, oddly enough, become also the world's biggest chat room at this point. It's basically what it is. You go to a live stream with 10,000 people on it. Yeah, there's quite a conversation, or should I say, a bunch of incoherent rambling in many cases actually taking place. That's about all. Peace out.